Peace and understanding class. Welcome. It is a beautiful Friday here in the state of Louisiana. It is extremely hot, and hopefully, uh, everyone is hydrating themselves and staying focused in this heat. I know it's hot just for those that live on campus and that have to transport themselves on foot. I know it is extremely difficult and challenging to go from point A to point B on campus. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. Been responding to emails, been grading the assignments that we have started. And again, I want you to be cognizant of the fact that it is your responsibility to know when things are due. It is your responsibility to be prepared. It is your responsibility to ask questions. I expect that from you. What you can again expect from me is to be there for you, to respond to your questions, and to try to assist you on your academic journey and helping you strive. To put you in a position to win and get to the end game because I am not the enemy. I want to empower you with the knowledge that you need to move forward. So with that being said, your personal introductions have been graded. I have been enjoying reading those as well as trying to give the bonus points for the subscription. Some people are not understanding and perhaps you do not want the bonus points. So I will be closing that section out soon. If you do not comment, because I'm seeing your username and I may not know, I had to go and look at your picture. So it's becoming somewhat tedious to try to give the points, but you need to make it plain so I can understand what's going on what's going on with that. Secondly, you have another 25-point bonus opportunity if you go to the rear of the campus, or some may call it the front, where the administration building is. On the bluff, you will see 3 grave sites. That is the final resting place of the Honorable Joseph S. Clark, Felton G. Clark, and his wife. All 3 of them are buried there, and that speaks volumes as to their position in the legacy of Southern University, and we want to be ostentatious with putting our leaders and our relevant people out front. Okay? So that's going to be posted on Moodle later today. If you go back, take a selfie, and send that to the tab on Moodle, you will be able to obtain those points. So let's talk today. I want to begin. And again, also, I know I'm aware of the situation with the textbooks. I sent out messages to the class. We're transitioning from Brightwave to another entity. So what is going to have to occur is that you're going to need to be patient. I'm going to be patient in understanding what's going on with that. We're going to have a training on it. We got an email about it. So sit tight. If you can get a physical copy of the book, there is also some of these in the library. You can go to the help desk. They have some of these books. It may be an older chapter, but you still can kind of maybe run copies of chapter 1 or maybe even have access to the text. So I'm going to introduce some tangible points from the chapter, but at first I want to introduce this, and this is also going to be on Moodle. I'm going to put a tab at the bottom of the section that says relevant notes. It's going to be either a Word document or a PDF, and it's going to be my attempt to extract some of the more relevant information. I'm not going to ever go through the chapter in its entirety. That is your job, to be cognizant and familiarize yourselves with the aforementioned information. You have to read the chapter. I will highlight on some of the relevant factors. You cannot just expect me to go through and explain every word of the chapter. You have to read it, and there has to be, again, some reciprocity we shall engage each other in this mission. So let's look at that. So let me kind of introduce chapter 1 to you, which is an early chapter which talks about the development of human societies. I gave you a list of society, culture, civilization, and reality. You should have kind of familiarized yourself with that verbiage, and you should know that what a society is. And culture is a part of society, and that civilization is a society's state of development. And I want to give you these additional words. I'm going to touch them again because I mentioned it on the other video. Civilis, Civilis, is the Latin word or the root word for civilization, and it means to be a citizen of. So if one is a citizen of a society or of a municipality or some governmental entity, that exudes the fact that there must be some form of order. Whatever the order may be, it may not be democratic, it may be communist, it may be whatever in modern times, but whatever the society decided was their order. I gave the examples of the Mayans and the Incans, some of them believing in human sacrifice. That was understood to be a norm. They believed superstitiously that if we did a human sacrifice, that the crops would grow, that they would have favorable weather. We're going to talk about the superstitious nature of that and where that comes from. But this chapter in particular is talking about, and I can't wait till we get into the origins of alphabets and language and writing, etc., etc. But this chapter is just talking about early man and his development, and I talked about the out of Africa theory. Mentioned it in class, and the out of Africa theory states that the category in which we belong, Homo sapiens, were first in Africa and nowhere else. Let me repeat that. Homo sapiens, the oldest skeletal remains can be found in Hador, Ethiopia, East Africa. Ethiopia, original name is Kush. And we're going to learn as we go forward about geography and how geography coincides chronologically with history. We're going to see how the names of places have changed over time, and once we learn these original names, we'll learn why they changed. We're going to learn how societies have adapted and borrowed and were taught by other societies that may have been in a higher state of development than them. So with this section, I want to talk about the Paleolithic and the Neolithic era. There are two categories that are relevant in history. We talk about them often. How mankind began, where did humans evolve, and where did they migrate. So according to the text and historical remains, organ dating, carbon dating, it is known that around 250 to 300,000 years ago, an exact anatomic being, Homo sapiens, us, existed and began to migrate. The Paleolithic era can be considered about 200,000 to 300,000 years up into 9,000 BCE. We're going to talk about, let me introduce that as well now, and put this in your notes, please. We're going to talk about the timeline that was created by a monk called Dionysius. Dionysius established BC and AD a methodology of counting time based on the life of Christ, before Christ and after death. There is no year zero, it's year one. But historians now have moved away from that, and the appropriate use, you still need to understand it, but the appropriate term is CE and BCE. Common Era and before the Common Era. We no longer use BC and AD. That is antiquated, although some terms may use it in religious circles. BC and BCE, Common Era and before the Common Era. I also told you about the term historia. Historia being the Latin word which means to investigate. And we talk about the development of history, but one of the single most important factors of history that allowed it to transition and to be a viable source of information, history was once oral, orally transmissions of stories. But with the advent of handwriting was a game changer. The development of handwriting allowed for one story to transmit through the annals of time. Just because it was written doesn't necessarily mean it's true. However, we have something to go off. So Historia, the advent of handwriting, BCE and CE, Common Era and before the Common Era, supersedes BC and AD. Hopefully we all have that. That's important. I would definitely ask you that. There are some biblical accounts that talk about Adam and Eve, these two first people that existed in this Garden of Eden near the Tigris and Euphrates River. This is an ongoing debate which we can have and others have had as well. But the location of the garden has never been verified. There are no skeletal remains of the aforementioned Adam and Eve. And when you look at biblical texts or religious texts and you juxtapose the two side by side, biblical texts have a tendency to be considered more literary, stories adapted from other stories, as opposed to a historical verifiable document. Historians research, analyze, and interpret, thereby being able to validate or reject a position or a theory or a hypothesis. If you lack that information, then it is considered conjecture. Conjecture means lack of proof, lack of data, lack of verifiability. Oftentimes the Bible is a faith-based book as well as other documents, not saying that they don't have some verifiable information, but in its totality there's a plethora of conjecture. Now, moving forward, these first people to evolve and develop lived in Africa. The Paleolithic era can be defined as the early Stone Age, Paleolithic, Paleolithic, Paleolithic. You should be on your tablet or your phone or whatever instrument you have to kind of follow along. One of the students said, "Professor, you talk so fast." I said, "I be getting excited when I share with my students because I love what I do." Paleolithic is a period that began about 2.5 million years ago. It's a period when humans began to create the use of stone tools, clothe themselves, and use natural products, and they went through a process called foraging. Foraging is your hunter-gatherer. They were nomads. They moved from place to place, following food, searching for fairer weather conditions, climates. You know how they say the birds fly south in the winter. It's hotter in the south. So the birds fly south in the winter. Likewise with these early nomadic individuals. Okay? Early on, these groups began to create divisions, and we're going to look at how mankind at this point was what we like to call in the state of nature. Solitary man. We will find out that man, that family is a microcosm of society, because from the family or two individuals, we have the advent to create a family. For the family to evolve into a tribe or a clan or a village, a town, a city, a state, a country. Man is a social creature by nature and strives for like-mindedness, compassion, and there's safety in numbers. More things can be done as you evolve to being civilized. There's a lot of other things that are a part of the Paleolithic era. Scientists have said, those of you that remember science when you talked about species and phylum and genus, etc., that we are a part of the classification or the genus Homo. And you have within that hominids. And hominids consist of chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutan and great apes. And also humans are hominids, according to science. It says that, the textbook says that 98% of human DNA is the same as that of chimpanzees, which indicates to most scientists that humans and chimpanzees share a common ancestor. This is what the assertions are. That takes you into Charles Darwin's book on natural species, the development of evolution. Science has a strong argument with that, but on the contrary to that, religion will argue that fact with the Adam and Eve theory. So, in addition to that, you have the Neolithic era. The Neolithic era is the new Stone Age era, when you have man at the beginning transitioning from a nomadic state, which means that man traveled, moved around, and became sedentary, began to domesticate animals. Who knows what domestication of animals is? I wonder if any one of you bright students knows what domestication of animals is. Domestication of animals is when man say, well, look, I alluded to the microcosm of society and the family, creating clans, creating tribes, creating villages. Instead of moving, following food, following animals, moving for fairer weather, man decided to become sedentary and locate in one region, thereby establishing the domestication of animals. Dogs, horses, cows, chickens, etc., for various purposes, for uses and for consumption. This is what happened in the Neolithic era. Domestication of animals, the beginning of agriculture, and this was a great period of time for man because society began to develop early. Now, in these time periods, we'll talk, there were crucial time periods, ice ages, which there were 4 major ice ages, which we'll talk about. But I want to introduce this to you about the Paleolithic and Neolithic people, individuals. Now, back to Homo sapiens. There are three other classifications I want you to be able to be cognizant of. Pardon me. Our little device fell down. Told you I get excited. There are five major categories I want you to know about. Homo sapiens. I'm gonna repeat it 3 times so you can get it. Homo sapiens are known as thinking humans. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, guys. I really apologize. Homo sapiens are known as thinking humans. Pardon me, please. Forgive me. Homo sapiens are known as thinking humans. That's what that term means. Homo sapiens have a larger brain and a great capacity to reason. Some of you may not reason in logic, I don't know. But you have great capabilities to do so. The second one, Homo erectus. Homo erectus. H-O-M-O erectus. Go back and Google it and look these things up. Homo erectus means upright human. Homo sapien means thinking human. Then you have the third, Homo habilis. Homo habilis. Homo habilis means handy human. So you're looking at upright human. Human that is standing fully erect. All these individuals lived thousands of years ago. But the difference with Homo erectus, Homo habilis, and Homo sapiens, they were in what we know as Africa today. You have 2 more. Neanderthals. I'm sure you've heard that term before and you've seen the images. These are the people that are actually from Africa. Africans migrated. We're going to talk about the migratory pattern and how Homo sapiens Neanderthals lived in Europe. And actually they lived in the caves and hills of Europe in the Neander Valley, which is near Germany. How you like that, Adolf Hitler? Talking about the Aryan supreme nation and the Neanderthal man, which is actually the caveman. You've seen images of the caveman? That's not in Africa. I repeat, that's not in Africa. In addition to the Neanderthal, you have the Cro-Magnon, C-R-O-M-A-G-N-O-N, Cro-Magnon. They were a cousin to the Neanderthal, and if you Google and go and look at some of the images, you'll see a distinct frontal lobe brow. It's where the eyebrows are, it kind of protrudes more, with a smaller cranium. These are some of the distinctions about that. So the textbook says Homo erectus was remarkably smart, but the Homo sapien, the thinking human, evolved in East Africa or in Afro-Eurasia. Again, that's a geography term. Afro-Eurasia is a combination alluding to the fact that these people lived in Africa, Europe, as well as Asia, Afro-Eurasia. The dominant point being Africa, saying that the Africans gave birth to these other personages, these other people. We're going to look at, when we get deeper into it, DNA, mitochondrial DNA, how to you do a DNA test that comes from the mother, mitochondrial DNA. You can determine the female lineage from mitochondrial DNA. We're going to talk about that in more detail, but I wanted to introduce this to you about the Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, Neanderthal, and how they lived, what their qualities were. All that is listed in the text about how they were able to develop tools, crude tools. But over time, they learned more and more, and as they re-encountered each other, they learned more and more skills to develop a social and complex society as the population grew, and they decided to stay together. There's protection in numbers, and also there's opportunity for sexual procreation. This is how populations grow. So you got all these people, at some point, it gets too big to just be moving. So this is why people became sedentary. You see the logic in that, Homo sapiens. Quickly moving on, uh, there's a lot of information in this chapter, but we talked about the foragers, how they worked, the hunter-gatherers, the man creating in the Paleolithic era, touching down and talking and domesticating animals and getting into agriculture, growing crops, growing sugar cane, growing wheat and things that they could consume that would help them transition from hunter-gatherers to being agricultural citizens. Now, also in this times, there are some early drawings that show that kind of, as far as a religious belief, you had individuals that were known as shamans. And a shaman is considered as a man or a woman who could touch into spiritual base or tap into the unseen world, could communicate with the unseen. Shamans had complex rituals which they would use, and these images were displayed through drawings and crude pictures. Also, there's a concept of animism. That is the belief that every living thing in nature has a soul or is alive. They believe this. And we get this from images and pictures that we see. That's a great deal. So I talked about the agricultural revolution. We're going to tap into that more because you're going to need to know a little bit more about that, how that worked, and how that changed society. The agricultural revolution. Paleolithic, Neolithic, agricultural revolution. And we're going to kind of look at the duties and the roles of men and women in this time. What did men do? What did women do? How did society develop gender roles? It's kind of a natural progression, I think, men and women having gender roles. Also, within this chapter, you have a concept that was called a metafungal extinction. We'll look at that too as I wrap up. This brought about the different demises of animals in an epidemic type of way. Metafungal extinction. Things being totally destroyed. You've had that. Dinosaurs on up. It's true that they exist, and we know that they're millions of years old. We're going to talk more about that, about how man began to discover nature and build houses and construct elementary societies to complex societies, the creation of gender roles, etc., etc. So in closing, I want to point this out. I want you to write down the 9 areas of human interaction. Write that down for your professor. The 9 areas of human interaction. The 9 areas of human interaction are as follows. Number 1, economics. Number 2, education. Number 3, entertainment. Economics, education, entertainment, the 3 E's. The next 2 are labor and law. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law. That's 5. Sex, politics, war, and religion are the 5 areas of human interaction which every society has and is broken down. We can see education in American society. We can see entertainment in this society. When you look back in history, you can see that we know typically a very easy one that the Romans had the games in the Colosseum, where that was entertainment. They fought to the death fights. You can see education, economic system. Of course, we have politics in this society. We can look at that. We have religion in this society. We have sex in this society. And of course, you have war. All 9 of these variables are present in every society, and this is the approach we're going to take. We're going to look at it through that lens to get a better understanding of how things were then, how they evolved, and where we are today. Every society has a history, but you have to sift through it and determine what's real. So you have the 9 areas of human interaction. That is important. I will see you guys Monday. Oh my God, that's crazy. That's the 3rd time. I might have to redo this video. I will see you guys Monday. And remember, always investigate the information you receive. If it is indeed the truth, it should stand the test of investigation. Love you guys. See you guys Monday. Come prepared. Stay tuned. Check Moodle. Go over your notes. Go over the lectures. And I will see you Monday. We're going to hit the ground running. Peace.